Blacksmithing. The Sophisticated Art of Blacksmithing. A Beginner's Guide. Written by Arthur Livingston. Narrated by Nicholas Santaseer. Introduction. Most people often misunderstand the art of blacksmithing. Some believe that blacksmithing is the trade of angry people, that beating and pounding metal is a great way to exercise out your anger and frustration. This, however, is far from true. Blacksmithing is a trade that requires a calm, patient, and controlled mind. The essence of the trade is not necessarily strength, but patience and perseverance. Anything done in anger will never yield anything beautiful. Anything done in haste is often half regrettable. The secret is to hit the metal with the right amount of force. The art of blacksmithing possesses an almost Zen-like quality, with its discipline of the mind. Beautiful ironworks is the product of a calculated and clear mind, of patiently waiting as your metals take shape. This book is written for anyone who has an interest in learning the trade of blacksmithing. In it, you'll find an outlined history of the trade to help you understand its roots and why only a few people know about it now. You will also learn more about the different tools used in this trade and be educated about the metals used and the primary techniques employed by blacksmiths. There are also practical applications and small projects if ever you wish to fully experience and learn the trade. Lastly, you'll find plenty of beginner's tips and vocabulary lists to help you better understand how things work. I hope that this book will help you a lot in your quest for knowledge about the art of blacksmithing. Fast facts. The Iron Bridge in Shropshire, England. Built in 1779, this bridge spans the Severn River and is the world's first iron bridge. This bridge is made from cast iron segments. It is about 100 feet and 6 inches long and took 20 months to build. It has 1,700 individual pieces, with the largest weighing over 5 tons. Each piece is forged individually to fit with each other. Chapter 1. History. What is a blacksmith? The term blacksmith is a combination of two words, black and smith. Generally, a smith is someone who works with metal. The Iron Age and blacksmithing came hand in hand. The Iron Age started when a primitive man discovered a faster way to melt iron ore to produce iron. Although lead is naturally common, it was never found in great quantities. Iron, on the other hand, is well distributed around the world. The first sources of iron came from meteorites and iron nodules from bogs and clay banks. Iron, as a blacksmithing material, became widely popular due to the construction of smelters or bloomeries. Bloomeries were strategically built in areas with an abundant supply of charcoal, iron ores, and flux. These bloomeries are beehive-like furnaces built into rocks that can withstand repeated heating. They have a vent on top and another opening on the side. Here, iron deposits were melted or smelted to separate the metal from the rocks. However, smelting iron requires hard work. Not only did they need a large supply of charcoal to fuel the furnaces, they also needed to find an ore that can produce the most amount of iron with the least amount of work. The iron ore was placed inside the furnace, and the charcoal contained within was set alight. As the charcoal burned hotter, the iron flowed and formed blooms. These blooms are then taken, hammered, and shaped to ingots. For decades, blacksmithing remained a crude art. It took years for people to get a grasp of metallurgy. Blacksmiths experimented on iron to create a more durable metal. They also developed processes to temper and harden the metal. They played with the carbon content of iron to make it more usable. They developed the alloys and the different tools, steels that we use today. As the iron industry prospered, so did blacksmithing. Blacksmithing eventually branched out to different specialties. By 1793, Eli Whitney, who was a genius in mass-producing metal parts, heralded the Industrial Revolution. He created and patented the cotton gin machine. This machine not only simplified cotton production, it also greatly reduced the cost of cotton. In turn, as the cotton industry prospered, the blacksmiths were called upon to provide the plows to plant cotton, the wheels, and horses shod, and build better roads to transport products. By 1838, John Deere was able to manufacture a superior plow that is made from steel. This single event sparked a significant milestone: iron versus steel. This also introduced the era of steam power. Inside the blacksmith's forges, things changed as well. Bellows were replaced by rotary fan blowers, and in larger shops, a steam-powered trip hammer was also used. During 1860, lumber was starting to cost less, and this made most people want to live in houses instead of log cabins. But as lumber grew cheaper, nails became more expensive. At the time, a single nail was made a piece at a time by a blacksmith, and as the demand grew bigger, people began to find ways to mass-produce nails and make it more affordable. Wheeling's LaBelle Nail Company answered the people's demands and started producing nails in massive amounts. They manufactured nails and sold it at an affordable price. This robbed the blacksmiths of their foremost product. By the late 1800s, railroads connected the country, and hardware is now mass-produced in factories and sold in shops. Automobiles came into the picture, and as World War I ended, so did wagon making. This further pushed blacksmithing trade close to non-existence. Some blacksmiths were able to transit from working on wagons to automobiles. The Studebaker family, well known for their Conestoga wagons, is an example of the ones who made the successful transition. Although the blacksmithing trade did not disappear overnight, it was nearly non-existent by the 1950s. The trade survived just barely, and only as a specialty. This era, however, was considered the golden age for architectural ironwork. A lot of America's most precious ironwork was made during this era. The Samuel Yellin Ironworks in Philadelphia was commissioned to create the iron grills for the windows of the Federal Reserve Bank. Some blacksmiths managed by commissioning intricate ironworks for mansions. These commissioned ironwork pieces involved stairs, window grills, gates, door knockers, and chandeliers. Decorative ironworks, however, came to an end as the Great Depression and the Second World War loomed. Fast facts: blacksmiths and dentistry. Dentistry was established around 19th century, but before that, people who cured dental problems were called tooth drawers or tooth pullers. The term was coined due to the small pliers tooth drawers used to extract a tooth. Blacksmith was more associated with this discipline mainly because they are responsible for creating and supplying the pliers that the tooth drawers used. Chapter 2: Basic Tools. In this chapter, you'll be introduced to the blacksmith's workplace and to the different tools that they use. First up is the forge. At the heart of every blacksmith's workplace is a hearth. This hearth is the forge or the smithy. Some people refer to the workplace as a forge, but in reality, the forge is actually the hearth of fire used to heat the metals. Back in the medieval times, charcoal and charcoal residues called coke are primarily used to fuel the Back in the medieval times, charcoal and charcoal residues called coke are primarily used to fuel the forges. Wood is heated hot enough but is deprived of oxygen to leave carbon behind, which then produces charcoal. Coke is a byproduct of charcoal that can also be utilized as a forge fuel. Nowadays, gas forges are available, and it offers a more convenient substitute to coal forges. Gas forges can heat more small ingots at the same time. It thus, however, produces lower heat value compared to charcoal forges. The lower heat requires the ingots to be in the forge longer to melt. The longer heating time risks highly oxidizing the ingot. To avoid unnecessary oxidization, a special kind of flux is added. Charcoal forges are prized for their higher heat value and less oxidation risks. Next is the anvil. An anvil is a heavy block of metal upon which hot metals are shaped, cut, and hammered. The earliest anvil was just a slab of rock. In time, other materials were used such as bronze, wrought iron, and steel. Most anvils nowadays are made from steel, although cheap ones are constructed from cast irons. Be creative enough, and you could also hand forge one from a piece of railroad track or from an old machine. Through the years, the shape of the anvil also evolved, from just a flat surface to the shape we all recognize now. The anvil design we know today is called the London pattern, which became commonplace during the 1800s. The length and size of an anvil can vary, but the key features are all the same. A standard design features a horn, a pritchel hole, a hardy hole, a face, and a step. The horn is the curved front end of the anvil. This part is used to curve and to draw out the metal. Some anvils have multiple horns to provide a variety of curves. The face is the hard and flat surface of the anvil. This is where most of the hammering happens. This area often sports two holes, the Pritchell hole and the Hardy hole. Although both holes can be utilized to bore a hole through metal, it can also be used to secure a variety of tools like chisels. The only difference is the shape of holes. A Pritchell hole is round-shaped, while a Hardy hole is square-shaped. The step is the area below the face and next to the horn. This part is mainly used for cutting metal. Tip. For practical purposes, you have to attach your anvil to a pedestal. Most blacksmiths use a tree stump because the wood absorbs the blows and reduces the rebound created by hammering. Make sure that your anvil is positioned right for your height, meaning not too high that you'll have difficulty reaching, and not too low that you'll have to stoop to work. There are three types of the hammers used for blacksmithing. These are the cross-peen, the ball-peen, and the engineer's hammer. The most widely used hammer for blacksmithing is the cross-peen hammer. It possesses a large diameter face on one side and a narrower peen on the other side. On the other hand, the ball-peen hammer's face has a smaller diameter, and the peen is roundish or ball-shaped. Lastly, we have the engineer's hammer, or the hand sledges. These have softer faces made for cold metal pounding, and are heavier compared to the other hammers. For beginners, it is advisable to choose either a cross-peen or a ball-peen hammer. However, it is best to pick one that feels most comfortable to work with. Consider the weight of the hammer and the type of work to be done when looking for a hammer. Once you start heating ingots, chances are you'll need a good tong. Vices or tongs are fireproofed hand extensions that you could use to safely hold hot metal. There are a variety of tongs that you can use depending on your requirements, but there are only three types of vices. The first is the leg vise. The leg vise is named for its long legs and comes with a built-in stand. The machinist vise is usually built from steel or cast iron. It is usually bolted to a bench and possesses removable jaws. The last type is the foot vise. This type of vise is not suitable to be the main vise. It is operated by applying pressure to the pedal for the jaws to grip. Tip. When looking for a tong or a vise, always check the jaws if they are easily operable and in good working condition. The water trough is also an essential part of the forge. Any old drum or bucket could be used for this purpose. The water trough is used for jousting water into the forge and for cooling the metal. When setting things up inside your workplace, it is advisable to keep the anvil and the water trough near the forge. This setup is more efficient as it lessens the amount of time needed to walk from the forge to the anvil or from the forge to the water trough. Since you'll be working with hot and cold metal, you'll need to have separate sets of tools for working with each. For hot metal work, the main consideration is the length. Tools should be long enough to keep the hot metal a safe distance away from the body. Remember, tools for hot metal work should be dipped in water regularly to avoid deforming the tools. Chisels are used for cutting metal. Hot chisels are more slender than cold chisels. A suitable hot chisel for blacksmithing would be made from steel alloys with much less carbon content. Cold chisels, on the other hand, are usually made from steel alloy containing at least 0.875 carbons. Another tool used for cutting is the set. Again, there are separate sets for working with hot and cold metals. Make sure you get both and use them appropriately. Sets are made and designed for use under a sledgehammer. Cold sets are stouter than cold chisels and are fitted with a handle on one side. A twisted hazel or iron rod is usually looped around the end part of the set to make the handle. Hot sets are commonly hafted like a hammer. Hardies are chisels that fit the Hardy hole of the anvil. It is best to have a variety of sets, chisels, and Hardies to meet the requirement of any job. Punches and drifts are used to bore holes into the metal. Punches used for hard work normally have a longer handle and are rotted. A drift has two tapered ends, with one end tapered longer than the other. These are inserted into the hole made by a slot punch to round or enlarge the hole. Fullers are chisel-like tools used to form shoulders, to create special shapes in metal, and to draw down in a particular direction. Swages are used to shape metals. The bottom swage is fitted into the hole of the anvil to secure it in place, and the upper swage functions as the shaping tool. It is best to have a variety of swages come in different shapes and sizes. Other necessary tools you'll be needing would include flatters, hand mandrels, bolsters, axes, and hacksaws. It is also advisable to keep empty cans nearby, which you can use for a variety of purposes, like storing smaller tools. Clean sand is also a must in your arsenal, because you can use this as a flux for welding. Fast facts. Anvil firing. Anvil firing is the practice of launching an anvil into the air with the aid of gunpowder. One anvil is placed face down and is filled with gunpowder. A second anvil is placed right face up on top of the first anvil. The gunpowder is ignited to shoot the anvil up. The height of the anvil's trajectory depends on the weight of the anvil and the amount and quality of the gunpowder used. This practice is used to substitute for fireworks and is a traditional practice to commemorate St. Clement's Day. St. Clement is the patron pope of blacksmiths. Chapter 3. Know Your Metals. Now that we have a better understanding of the workplace and the tools employed in blacksmithing, let us focus on the materials typically used by blacksmiths. Iron is the second most widely distributed metal next to aluminum, and the fourth most abundant element. People have, in fact, been using it for centuries, before the rise in its popularity during the 14th century, after the invention of smelting furnaces. Iron has a melting point of 1,538 degrees Celsius, a boiling point of 2,862 degrees Celsius, and an atomic number of 26. Iron ores are rock formations from which metallic iron can be extracted. It makes up about 5% of the Earth's crust and is among the most abundant rock elements in the world. Sedimentary rocks rich in iron, or banded iron formations, BIFs, are the most important iron ore resources. BIFs are usually of Precambrian age, or over 541 million years old. Almost 98% of the world's iron ore is processed to create steel. Steel comprises up to 90% of the world's metal. A lot of iron ore mines employ beneficiation to improve and upgrade the physical properties of harvested iron. Ore processing facilities are constructed on mines to allow beneficiation of contaminated and low-grade iron ores. There are different kinds of beneficiation processes. One beneficiation process is called pelletizing. This process is ideal for powdery or very fine ores. Powdery iron ores are shaped and formed into pellets. Another beneficiation treatment is sintering. The sintering treatment involves heating and incorporating coke, crushed limestone, and/or other additives into the iron ores. Additives used include coke fines, waste from furnace exhaust gas, and scale, which is a byproduct of rolling mill operations. Carburization is a beneficiation treatment that involves adding a very minimal amount of carbon into iron. The addition of carbon, or other additives, makes iron significantly harder and stronger. Steel is iron with a very small amount of carbon, usually about 0.2 to 2.1% out of the whole. Steelmaking has been employed by mankind for nearly 4,000 years. Pig iron refers to smelting iron ores, either in sinter, lump, or pellet form, and adding carbon fuel. The remaining impurities of pig iron are removed through oxidation. These impurities include phosphorus, sulfur, and silicon. The great thing about steel is that it is very recyclable, and the recycling process is actually very economic. Recycling steel requires less energy than producing new steel. Recycled steel even has the same strength as new ones. There are 5 types of steel. Stainless steel is rust-resistant and is one of the cheapest metals to produce and reproduce. Cobalt steel is distinctive for its bluish color. It is also rust-resistant and temperature-stable. This means that it can withstand extreme heat and friction. However, cobalt steel has a tendency of cracking and breaking when subjected to heavy weight or pressure. Carbon steel contains a lot more carbon and comes in 2 forms: high alloy steel and high carbon steel. Both forms are soft, malleable, cost-efficient, and cheap. However, if not protected properly from oxidation, this type of steel will succumb to corrosion and rusting. Carbide steel, as the name suggests, contains carbide as an alloying additive. Carbide makes the steel stronger and extremely dense or heavy. However, carbide produces a fume that can cause fibrosis when inhaled. This type of steel is hazardous and requires professional handling. High-speed steel, or HSS. This type of steel is very resistant to abrasion, making it the most used steel in toolmaking. HSS is also very affordable and is often mass-produced. Wrought iron has a lower carbon content compared to steel and cast iron. This type of iron is often considered as the traditional for blacksmithing. Before modern purification standards, wrought iron was considered as pure iron. However, this is certainly not the case. Wrought iron is, in fact, the end product of puddling a pig iron. That said, it is more expensive than steel. Wrought iron is very ductile and malleable. It is also favored by blacksmiths as material for decorative ironwork. The further addition of carbon, about 2.2% to 4%, into wrought iron results in cast iron. Cast iron is harder than steel, but is more prone to breaking and is less workable. However, it is comparatively easier to cast and has a relatively lower melting point. The most suitable steel alloys for smithing are those that have lower grades and only have carbon as an alloying element. A steel alloy with about 0.5% of carbon is recommended for most basic projects. A sharp-edged tool requires steel is best used on alloys with up to 1.5% carbon content. You can find these alloys at steel yards and buy them by the bulk. Alloys can also be bought at your local hardware store, although they are pricier and there tends to be a limited selection. Otherwise, you could also use scrap metals, old bed frames, springs, and rebar. If you are using these kinds of odds and bits, however, it is best to avoid plated, painted, or galvanized bits, as they give off toxic fumes upon heating. Rust in scraps is not a problem, because rust will usually flake off when heated. Fast facts. Ancient steel. People have been making steel for centuries. The earliest evidence of steelmaking was a piece of ironware. This ironware was about 4,000 years old and was unearthed at an archaeological site in Anatolia. Chapter 4. Blacksmithing 101. Now that we know the tools and metals that are often used, it is time to heat up the forge and take the hammer. Keeping it hot. The fire in the forge should be maintained at all times. When lighting the forge, you have to make sure to remove any clinkers first. These clinkers would stick and obstruct the air hole and can deform the metal. Keep the fire as small as possible. You should also make sure that the fire is directly below the metal that you are heating. Anywhere else, and the fire becomes useless. Know that varying types of metals require different temperatures in order for it to work. A dull red fire is suitable for annealing and hardening high carbon steels. Medium red fires are for medium carbon steels. A bright red fire is perfect for annealing mild steels. High carbon steels are best forged at either orange or yellow fires. Medium carbon steel should be forged at yellow fires, while mild steel is forged at bright yellow fires. Tip. Monitor the color changes of the metal in the forge. Thinner and smaller pieces tend to heat faster and ensure the metal heats evenly. Metal shaping is a lot like shaping clay. The only difference is that metal shaping is much more strenuous work and requires a lot more prep. First of all, you need to heat the metal in order to shape it. It takes about 1,400 degrees Celsius to heat metal enough to make it workable. The safest way to know when your metal is ready to work with would be when it has turned into an orange or yellow color. If you reach temps higher than 1,600 degrees Celsius, your metal will turn white and melt. Reheat metal when it turns a light red shade. Chances are you will have to reheat your metal repeatedly until your work is done. But the good news is, mistakes are often forgivable in blacksmithing. You just have to reheat the metal and try again. Hammer it right. Hammering requires control, accuracy, and precision. You need to calculate the amount of strength you have to apply in order for the metal to take shape the way you want it to. Hasty and uncontrolled pounding will get you nowhere, so practice is important if you're still a beginner. First, make sure that the hammer is well balanced and just the right size for you. Hold the hammer lightly, but firmly, and maintain at least an inch distance between your pinky finger and the edge of the hammer. Use your whole arm when swinging, and try to keep your elbow as close to your body as possible. Control is more important than strength in your hammer stroke. Assess the metal as you pound it. Adjust your position, angle, and hammer grip, and stroke as you work. Forging techniques. There are different ways to apply force and shape metals. The first is called drawing out. This process lengthens the metal by reducing its width and depth. In this process, the piece of metal grows thinner and thinner as it lengthens. This technique is also done to create sharp edges. To do this, you have to strike the metal flat with the peen side of the hammer. Be sure to rotate the metal every few strikes. Review your metal and see if it is thinning out or growing longer in the way you want it to. Next is upsetting. In this technique, the main idea is to add volume to a metal piece. To upset your piece, you need your metal to be near welding heat, or yellow-white. The higher temperature needed in this technique may cause the metal to bend in the wrong place if you're not careful. To avoid this, you have to wet the space right beneath the part you are working on. To upset a metal properly, you have to hold it tight and hit it squarely with the hammer. Rotate the piece after each individual blow and continue hammering until it reaches the desired shape. Alternately, you could also place the heated part of the metal face down on the anvil and hammer the part you need to. The tapering technique is identical in procedure with drawing out. However, in this technique, the main objective is not just to lengthen the metal, but to add a pointed or tapered end as well. To do this, you need to place the heated part of the metal at a 45-degree angle on the anvil. Strike it squarely with the flat face of the hammer. At every few strikes, you have to rotate the metal. Reheat the metal if needed. There are different ways to twist or bend metals. You could use a bending tool, or you could use a vise. You could also lay the heated metal part over a form, like the anvil's horn, and hammer it down to bend it. But if you want to scroll your metal, it is advisable to taper the ends first. Place the metal over the horn and hammer until it starts to curve. Repeat and reheat as needed. To punch a hole into a metal, you need to heat the metal up to forging heat. Place it on the face of the anvil and secure the piece with a vise. Position the punch where you want the hole to be in, and then strike down with your hammer. After a few hits, cool down the punch to avoid deformation. When the punch is nearly through, move the metal piece over to the hole of the anvil, and turn the metal to the other side. Drive the punch through to the other side. Connecting metals. Here I will discuss how you connect metals. The first way is through the use of rivets. Rivets are like metal pins, or a thick nail, except for its lack of a pointed end. First, take the two pieces of metal that you want to hold together and bore similar-sized holes in each piece. Find a rivet that fits perfectly on both holes, and then heat it. When it is hot enough, take it out with a tong and slide it inside both holes. Upset the flat end of the rivet to create a head, and you're done. The other way is through forge welding the pieces together. This technique is used to join metals permanently and seamlessly. For this, you have to heat the metal pieces until it turns white. Place the pieces on your anvil and sprinkle borax on it. Next, you need to stick the pieces together and hammer it down until both pieces are joined properly. Finishing. So, what happens after you've finished forming your metal in the way you wanted to? You can't just set it aside. You need to properly finish the job. For this, you can use heat treatment. This involves heating metal pieces up to a certain temperature and then cooling it in a controlled way. There are different ways to do this depending on what you want from your metal. These are: annealing is usually done as a preparation before hardening. A metal piece is annealed by slowly heating it up to cherry red and then burying it in ashes to cool it down. This process can remove stresses from within the metal. Normalizing is done to remove stress caused by forging. Like annealing, the metal piece is heated to a cherry red, but is left out to cool naturally. Hardening, on the other hand, is done to make the metal stronger and more wear-resistant. This treatment involves cooling the heated metal by submerging it completely in room temperature water or oil. To do this, heat your finished piece in the forge slowly and evenly until it turns a cherry red color. Watch it carefully and make sure not to overheat it. Once it reaches the desired temperature, quench it or submerge it in water. Softening or tempering treatment reduces hardness and strength, but restores ductility and increases toughness. This is necessary to make your metal piece more ductile and malleable. After quenching your metal piece, return it to the forge and heat it slowly until it turns cherry red. When it turns cherry red, remove it from the heat and place it on top of your anvil until it cools and turns to black. After this, leave your metal piece to sit out at room temperature and continue to cool. Or you can also place it in a container with perlite and leave it overnight. There are also additional steps that you need to know to further protect your piece from rust and corrosion. You can apply beeswax, linseed oil, paint, or varnish. Beeswax and linseed oil can protect your piece from rust, and it leaves off a black matte finish. Heat the metal piece to black heat, and then apply beeswax or linseed oil to the metal piece with a rug or a brush. Buff the piece with cotton cloth for added shine. Fast facts: Damascus steel. Damascus steel is a type of steel that is mainly used in sword making. It was said that swords made from Damascus steel were sharp enough to split a feather even in midair. These swords are distinguishable by a watery or damask pattern imprinted on their blades. Bladesmiths who made these kinds of swords are very secretive about their methods, and thus the technique on making these kind of steel was lost to modern day. Chapter 5. Practical Applications. In this chapter, you'll find simplified step-by-step instructions about simple ironwork projects for you to try to practice. It consists of detailed instruction on how to make your own blacksmithing tools from scratch and scrap. The best way to put your knowledge to the test is to create tools. Also, it is important for blacksmiths to learn and experience how to hand forge their own tool. Not only will doing so save you money on having to buy a set, it also makes the tools a bit more special, as it was created by your own hands. Toolmaking project number 1. Nails. What you'll need: nail header and a piece of 1/4 inch round or square steel stock. Equipment needed: anvil, hot chisels or hot sets, hand torch, hammer, nail heading tool. Instructions: 1. Draw out and taper the end of your steel stock. 2. Make a shoulder while drawing out the stock. Use the roundish side of the anvil to create the shoulder. 3. Reduce the stock to a square cross-section and make sure that the diameter is about half of the original stock. 4. Taper slightly towards the end to create a pointed tip. 5. Cut the stock about 3/8 inches above the shoulder. This extra stock will be the head of the nail. 6. Heat only the head of the nail by using a torch. 7. When it is hot enough, insert the nail into the heading tool. 8. Position the heading tool on the anvil face with the nail protruding into the pritchel hole. 9. The first hammer blow should knock the head over and center it on the nail shaft. 10. Hammer straight down once, then once on each side, and finished off with a hammer blow in the middle. 11. Remove the finished nail from the anvil and allow normalizing. Toolmaking project number 2. Round punch. What you'll need: used vehicle coil spring. Equipment: hammer, anvil, hot sets or hot chisel. Instructions: 1. Measure out and cut at least a 200mm long piece from the coil spring. 2. Heat and hammer this piece along the curves to straighten it. 3. Once you have a straight piece of metal, it is time to taper out one end. 4. Form the striking end by drawing out and then flattening one side. 5. Draw down the other end of the punch. 6. Leave the finished product to normalize. Toolmaking project number 3. Hot chisel. What you'll need: old car haft shaft. Equipment: hot sets, hammer, anvil, torch, bucket full of water for quenching, files or grinders. Instructions: with a hot set, remove the grilled part of the car shaft. Heat the area under the grilled part of the haft shaft. 2. Position the hot set on the area that you wish to cut and hammer down. 3. Rotate the haft shaft with every few blows to ensure even cutting, and remember to quench the hot set as well. 4. Finish cutting the grilled part against the horn of the anvil. 5. Cut the shaft to the appropriate length, usually about 400 millimeters, with the hot set. 6. Taper by drawing down and flattening one end of the half shaft. 7. Draw down the blade section to spread it out. This should result in a curved and long cutting edge. 8. File or ground the cutting edge. Toolmaking project number 4. Cold chisel. What you'll need: 1 150mm long coil spring. Equipment: hammer, anvil, hot file or grinders, grinding steel, bucketful of water for quenching. Instructions: 1. Straighten the coil spring as you did with the punch. 2. Taper one end by drawing down. Flatten the top end by striking it straight down. This is striking end of the cold chisel. 3. Draw down the other end to form the cutting side of the chisel. Continue to taper until you have a sharp edge. 4. Strike the sides of the cutting edge to prevent it from spreading out. 5. Hot file or grind the cutting edge. 6. To harden the chisel, heat blade up until it turns into a cherry red color. However, only do this up to a quarter of the shaft. 7. When it reaches the cherry red color, quench the chisel in a bucket full of water. 8. Slowly move the chisel up and down the water bucket, but keep the blade properly submerged. 9. As the tip gets cool enough, remove the chisel from the water. 10. Clean the chisel along and near the blade with the use of a grinding steel. Do not place your chisel on the anvil, as this will cool your chisel too quickly. 11. Monitor for temperature colors. When the chisel starts turning purple, quench it in a bucket of water. 12. For the second quenching, the water in the bucket should only cover the blade part of the chisel. Leave the chisel in the bucket until it has completely cooled off. Toolmaking project number 5. Hot set. What you'll need: a piece of strong and thick leaf spring and 1 10mm long round section mild steel rod. Equipment: hot sets or hot chisels, bucketful of water for quenching, hammer, anvil, tongs, hot punch, hot drift, rulers, clamps and vices, grinding steel or steel file. Instructions: 1. Measure out approximately 40 millimeters from the leaf spring to the mark. 2. Cut the marked part with a hot chisel or a hot set. Quench the cutting tool every few blows. 3. Stop cutting when you have reached halfway through and break it against the edge of the anvil. 4. With the help of a tong, forge the rough edge of the metal piece into a wedge. 5. Flatten the top of the thicker end and forge in the corners around the face. This will be the striking end of the hot set. 6. Take the punch and position it on one side, approximately nearer to the striking end. Hammer straight down until you are about 3/4 through. Reposition the metal on the pritchel hole and finish up on the other side. 7. Enlarge the hole with the drift until it reaches the suitable width to fit the steel rod. 8. Do the same on the end of the wedge. The holes should be perfectly aligned with each other. Measure out the distance between these holes. 9. Work on the blade end by forging it down. Hammer down the sides if the blade starts to spread out. 10. Forge down to a slightly tapered point on end of the steel rod. 11. Measure out about 150 millimeters from the tapered end and bend the metal into a U shape. 12. The width of the U should be identical to the measured distance between the holes. 13. Slip the steel rod into the tool head and flatten down the bend. 14. Fold the longer end of the steel under the tool head. The tapered end should stick out to one side. 15. Hold the tapered end with a tong and then wrap it around the base of the tool head. 16. Form the handle by bending about 15 millimeters from the end and angling at about 90 degrees. 17. File or ground the blade using grinding steel or a steel file. Toolmaking project number 6. Do-it-yourself blacksmithing anvil. What you'll need: a section of railroad track, about 18 inches, and an 18-inch truck leaf spring. Equipment: torch, hammer, clamp, drill, drum full of water. Instructions: 1. Search for a good piece of scrap railroad track. 2. Shape the railroad track to look like an anvil. With the help of a torch, soften and cut the railroad track and form a horn on one side. 3. To make the face of the anvil, anneal the truck leaf spring. When it cools, weld it on top of the railroad track up to the base of the horn. 4. Use clamps to flatten the section of spring into the top of the railroad track. Spot weld in some places before completely welding the pieces together. 5. Create a pritchel hole by boring a hole about 5/16 inch in size. 6. Create a hardy hole by drilling a hole about 5/8 inches wide. 7. Heat the finished anvil for 30 minutes and then quench it in a drum full of water. Continue adding water to the drum to completely cool the anvil. Toolmaking project number 7. Tongs. What you'll need: 1/4 inch by 3/4 inch by 8 inch mild steel and soapstone. Equipment: ruler, center punch, hammer, clamp, slitter, drift, anvil, bucket full of water for quenching. Instructions: 1. Measure out 1 1/4 inch from the end of the steel and mark. This will become the jaws of the tong. 2. Measure out 1 inch from the jawline and mark. This will serve as the boss of the tong. 3. With a center punch, define the mark you made for the jaw. 4. Define the boss mark that you lined on the underside of the steel with a center punch. 5. Indent both sides of the boss by a half-face hammer blow. 6. Draw out the reins by alternately hammering both edges. Do this until you reach the desired length for the tong. 7. When you reach the desired length, break the corners to give the piece a more rounded edge and plenish. 8. Compare the steel pieces and even out their length. The steel pieces should be identical in length. 9. Attach the piece to a clamp. Make a 90-degree twist in the middle of the jaw and the boss. Remember to twist both pieces in the same direction. 10. Round the corners of the twist to make the jaw and the boss smooth. 11. With the use of a center punch, mark the hole for the rivet. 12. Use a slitter to start boring the hole. The slitter should be slightly bigger than the rivet that you will use. Position the slitter vertically into the boss. 13. When you are almost through cutting the hole, flip your steel and mark the point where the slitter would come through. 14. Reheat the metal and continue boring the hole on the other side of the metal. Widen the hole by driving the slitter all the way through. 15. Round the hole using a slightly larger drift. Drive the drift through each side alternately. 16. Find a rivet that will fit perfectly on the tongs rivet hole. 17. Heat the rivet up. Keep a keen eye on the rivet as you heat it to avoid burning. 18. Insert the rivet into the rivet hole and hammer it into place. 19. Heat the finished tong and work on it while it's still hot. 20. Adjust the tongs and align the reins. 21. Quench the tongs, but be sure to work them so they will not get locked in place. Toolmaking project number 8. Eye chisel. What you'll need: a straightened out piece of heavy coil spring, or an old anti-roll bar, or a thin half shaft. Just make sure that diameter of the steel is about 20 to 30 millimeters. Equipment: hammer, anvil, ruler, hot set or hot chisel, hot file or grinders. Instructions. 1. Draw down and flatten one end of the bar. This will serve as the striking area for the eye chisel. 2. Measure out about 400 millimeters and cut it using a hot chisel or a hot set. 3. Drown down the blade end of the chisel and carefully taper it. 4. Forge the tapered area into a diamond shape. Work on it one side at a time to ensure that the blade end is shaping perfectly. You might need to reshape certain parts as you go, so if you want something that's really even, keep a close eye on how things are shaping out. 5. Hot file or grind the blade end. Toolmaking project number 9. Eye drift. What you'll need: a piece of a vehicle's half shaft. Equipment: ruler, anvil, hammer, hot set or hot chisel. Instructions. 1. Form the striking area of the eye drift by drawing down and tapering. 2. Cut the shaft to an appropriate length with a hot set or a hot chisel. The eye drift should be longer than the eye chisel. 3. Draw down flat about a third of the length of the shaft. 4. Forge down the corner of the tapered end. Toolmaking project number 10. Cross-peen hammer. What you'll need: old vehicle half shaft. Equipment: hot set or hot chisel, hammer, anvil, hot punch, cold chisel, hot drift, block of wood, adze, saw, bucketful of water for quenching, ash for annealing. Instructions. 1. Cut off the splined end of the vehicle half shaft. 2. Cut both sides to remove the creased end. Taper down this side. 3. Finish the peen by hammering 2 long ridges. 4. Position the shaft across the anvil with the peen laying crosswise. 5. Flatten a small area where you will punch in the eye. 6. Use a cold chisel to mark where you'll be punching in the eye. 7. Reheat the metal. 8. Drive the chisel about halfway into the shaft. Quench the chisel every few blows. 9. Once you're about halfway through, flip the shaft and continue punching from above facing side. 10. Drive the chisel all the way through to allow the drift to pass through. 11. Shift over on the hardy hole and drive the drift through the hole. Alternate both sides as you drive the drift through. 12. Form the cheeks of the hammer by forging the metal pushed out by the drift. 13. Insert the drift through the hole and forge down the cheeks to flatten it. 14. With a hot chisel, mark out the spot where you'll be shaping and cutting the hammerhead from. The eye should be right in the middle of the face and the peen. 15. Cut the hammerhead from the shaft. Rotate the shaft after every blow to ensure accurate cutting. 16. Remove the bulges on the face of the hammer with a hot set. 17. Support the peen on a block of wood and forge the hammer face. 18. Harden and temper the hammerhead. 19. Pick out a piece of timber with its grain running as straight as possible along its length. 20. Cut it to size. Use an adze to shape it into a rectangle. 21. Still using an adze, trim down one end of the timber to fit the eye of the hammerhead. 22. Thin down a short portion of the shaft right below the area where you'll be attaching the hammerhead. This thinner part will help absorb the shock from every use. It will make using the hammer less tiring. 23. Continue shaping the hammer shaft to the desired shape. 24. Cut a shaft on top of the shaft at about 3/4 long of the eye. 25. Make a wedge from the same wood that you used in the hammer shaft. It should be as wide as the slot that you made. 26. Fit the hammer shaft into the eye of the hammerhead. 27. Insert the wedge into the slot. Reduce the length of the wedge and then push it down firmly until it is at the same level as the shaft. 28. Make a metal wedge to secure the hammerhead in place. Cut serrations into the metal wedge with a hot chisel. 29. Drive the metal wedge vertically along the wooden wedge. Fuel-making project. Charcoal. Charcoal is commercially available and is quite abundant in most places. That said, if you're planning on blacksmithing as a profession, or even as a hobby, it would be very handy if you knew how to create charcoal from scratch. Charcoal is literally just charred coal. You can make charcoal from almost anything organic, from corn cobs to coconut husks, sugarcane and bamboo, and from fallen logs and driftwoods. Here's how to make some. You will need a large drum, something fireproof. Next, you need to drill 5 2-inch holes on one end. Then, completely remove the other end of the drum. Form a ledge on the opened end of the drum. Arrange bricks to serve as the base of the drum. Position the drum, opened end up, on top of the pre-arranged brick base. Do not obstruct the air holes on the bottom of the drum. Put paper pieces, rags, and other kindling on the very base of the drum and set it on fire. Once it is burning up, put some dry wood inside the drum until it is nearly full. Remember to put longer pieces first so they burn out longer. Restrict the air passage into the drum by applying earth. Place the lid on top and secure it, but leave at least about an inch gap for smoke to pass through. White smoke will be produced during the charring process. Once the smoke starts to turn blue, close off all air access by putting more earth at the base of the drum and by closing the lid securely. Let this burn for another 3 to 4 hours. Avoid the urge to peek at its progress during this time, as it might cause a flash fire by accident. After 4 hours, you would have to let your coal cool down completely. This should take about a day. After that, open the drum and tip it slowly to reveal the charcoal you have produced. Do-it-yourself forge. In this section, you'll learn about one of the simplest ways when it comes to building your own forge. You could set up your forge anywhere you want, but keep in mind that open flames produces more smoke and fumes that are dangerous when in an enclosed area. A chimney can help with this, but if it's not available, a completely open forge is your best option. So let's start with the materials. Some people have forges built from old bathtubs, new sink tubs, or unused grills. But for this project, we will be using some plywood, cement, and pipes. The ideal forge size is about 3 feet high by 5 feet wide. This dimension is large enough to give you enough space for a healthy fire. Build the framework by using the sturdiest wood you can find. Next, cover the framework with plywood. Make sure that the covering is strong enough to support a large amount of cement and dirt. You should now have a rectangular wooden box. Next, you have to build a stand for your forge. The forge should reach up to your waist to make it more ergonomic. For more maneuverability, you could attach wheels on the foot of your forge so you can move it around easily. Just be sure to put a stopper on the wheels to keep it steady when you're working. After attaching a stand to your forge, the next step is to make a hole on both ends of the forge. The hole should be large enough to admit a pipe. This pipe will become the air source of our forge. Insert the pipe into the hole and allow it to extend up to 8 inches high. Fill the forge with mud, bricks, or soil up to the pipe level. Drill about 20 to 25 holes on the pipe in a circular pattern. These holes will serve as the tweer or tuyere. After this, you need to mix cement for the forge. But before you pour in the cement, you need to make sure that the tweer will not be blocked by it. Make an open top and bottom square box large enough to fit the pipe. Secure these boxes on the pipes and pour in the cement. Fill the frame with cement, and when it is nearly dry, remove the wood guards. Mix a thicker concrete and use it to create a slope around the pipe. This sloped area will ensure that air reaches the fuel. The do-it-yourself forge is almost finished. It only needs an air source. There are a variety of devices that could be used as an air source for the forge. Electric blowers from vacuum cleaners or car heaters can be used as an air source. These should be connected to a rheostat to give you control over how powerful the air blast is. You could also purchase a hand-crank blower to serve as an air source. Or you could scrounge for a bellow in a junkyard or antique shops. Whichever you opt for as an air source, keep in mind that you would have to be able to control the amount of air that goes into the forge. So pick something that you're comfortable with using. Once you've figured out which contraption to use for your air source, you need to attach it to the forge. If you are right-handed, you need to connect the air source on the hole that's located on the left side when you face your forge. If you are left-handed, connect it to the right side hole when you face your forge. This will allow your more efficient hand to tend the metals when you're working. After attaching the air source to the pipe, you would still have another pipe left open. This pipe will serve as drainage for when you're cleaning the forge. You can make a lid for this pipe, or you could use a cork stopper to close it off. Chapter 7. Things to Remember. In this chapter, we'll go through the main points we've established throughout the book. The forge, the anvil, and the water trough should be placed as close to each other as much as possible. Charcoal, coke, and gas can fuel a forge. A good anvil is fundamental to successful work. There are a variety of hammers available, but the cross-peen or ball-peen hammer is most suitable to blacksmithing. The three types of vise are leg vise, foot vise, and the machinist's vise. Other tools necessary in blacksmithing includes but is not limited to the following. 1. Chisels and sets. 2. Axes. 3. Swages. 4. Punchers and drifts. 5. Augers. 6. Flatters and files. 7. Hacksaws and auger bit. 8. Specialty hammers. Iron is widely distributed and abundant throughout the world. Most iron ores are found as banded iron formations, BIFs. BIFs, or sedimentary rock formations, are over 541 million years old. Beneficiation upgrades the quality of ores. Pelletizing, sintering, and carburization are all beneficiation processes. The addition of carbon and other additives like limestone and coke improves the quality of iron. Steel only has 0.2 to 2.1% of carbon, making it harder. Stainless steel is rust-resistant, recyclable, and very affordable. Cobalt steel can withstand extreme heat and friction and is bluish in color. Carbon steel is malleable, cost-efficient, and soft, but is at risk of rusting and corrosion. Carbide steel is extremely heavy and is mainly used as support. It is also very hazardous on one's health. High-speed steel, or HSS, can withstand constant friction and is mostly used in tool making. Steel is very recyclable, and the recycling process is very economic. Steel is very cost-efficient. Steel alloy with about 0.5% of carbon is suitable for blacksmithing. Wrought iron was once considered as pure iron. Wrought iron is suitable to use for decorative ironworks. Pig iron impurities are removed through oxidation. Cast iron has more carbon content than steel and wrought iron. Cast iron is harder, but is less ductile and more brittle. The forge should reach at least 1,600 degrees Celsius. The fire should be maintained, and clinker should be removed at all cost. Understanding the color of the fire is tantamount to blacksmithing. Controlled swings are more important than strength in hammering. Drawing out is used to lengthen metal by decreasing the diameter and the depth of metal pieces. Tapering is done to create sharp ends. The process is the same with drawing out. Upsetting is employed to thicken or widen metal piece. There are a lot of ways to bend and twist a piece of metal. To bore a hole in a piece of metal, a punch is used. Rivets are used to hold pieces of metal together. Forge welding pieces allows you to join pieces together permanently and seamlessly. To forge weld, you need to heat pieces of metal to welding heat or until they turn white. Heat treatment is done as a finishing process. It involves heating the metal pieces up to a certain temperature and then cooling it. Annealing involves heating the ironwork and then burying it in ashes to cool. Hardening is done by heating the metal and then quenching it in water. To temper a piece of metal, it is reheated in the forge, quenched in water, and is placed on top of the anvil to cool. It is then transferred to an insulated container of perlite overnight. Finished ironworks need to be protected from rust by applying finishes like beeswax, linseed oil, paint, or varnish. Glossary. Alloy. A metal made from melting and mixing two or more metals. Anvil. A heavy slab of iron on which heated metal is shaped by hammering. Armorer. A blacksmith specializing in armors. Ball peen hammer. A hammer with a ball-shaped peen and smaller diameter face. Bellows. A device that creates strong air current when pressure is applied to its side. Beneficiation. Process that improves and upgrades the quality of low-grade and contaminated iron ores. Blacksmith. Is a craftsman who deals with metal, especially iron and steel. Bladesmith. Is a blacksmith who specializes in swords and knives. Bloomeries. A beehive furnace built into a rock that is used for melting ores to get iron. Blooms. A mass of iron from the forge. Carburization. The process of combining metal with carbon. Clinkers, or leftovers from anything that is burned for too long. Coke. A residue of coal or other material which is also used as a fuel. Cross-peen hammer. A hammer with a larger diameter face and a narrow face like peen. Flux. A substance that is used to help melt or join metals. Forge. A place where metals are heated and shaped, also called a smithy. Gunsmith. A blacksmith specializing in gun parts like barrel and trigger. Locksmith. A blacksmith that specializes in locks. Ingots. A solid piece of metal that has been formed and shaped for easy storage and handling. Metallurgy. The science that deals with nature and uses of metals. Pelletizing. Process of beneficiation that shapes powdery iron ores into pellets. Rivets. A special kind of metal pin used to hold metal pieces together. Quenching. Submerging metal pieces in water. Sintering. Process of beneficiation that incorporates and agglomerates additives to iron ores. Smelters. Furnaces used to melt iron. Tongs. An object usually made from two long pieces connected either at the end or in the middle, used for holding or lifting objects. Conclusion. It has been a great pleasure to accompany you on your quest for knowledge. We hope that the information provided to you through this book would not only satisfy your curiosity, but also motivate you to try the art of blacksmithing for yourself. There is more to this ancient art form than merely pounding and shaping metal. Consider its history, and, of course, its many practical uses in our daily lives. Thanks again for buying my book. If you have a minute, please leave a positive review. You can leave your review by clicking on this link. Leave your review here. Thank you. I take reviews seriously and always look at them. This way, you are helping me provide you better content that you will love in the future. A review doesn't have to be long, just 1 or 2 sentences, and a number of stars you find appropriate. Hopefully 5, of course. Also, if I think your review is useful, I will mark it as helpful. This will help you become more known on Amazon as a decent reviewer, and will ensure that more authors will contact you with free ebooks in the future. This is how we can help each other. You can download any of my other books too. Just click on the links. This has been Blacksmithing, The Sophisticated Art of Blacksmithing, A Beginner's Guide. Written by Arthur Livingston. Narrated by Nicholas Santacier. Copyright 2017 by Arthur Livingston. Production copyright 2017 by Arthur Livingston.